Hi everyone, this is a WalkCycle with this little Bali character. First thing we need to do is go to Windows, Settings, Preferences, and go down to Settings and make sure our time is on 24 frames per second. Then go over to Animation and make sure our default in and out tangents are set to plateau. That way it's flat when we need them to be flat and sloped when we need them to be sloped. Go over to your time slider bar and make sure your update view is set to all and your playback speed is set to 24 frames per second. Go over to undo, and I also like to make sure that my undos are on infinite, just in case I make a mistake really far back. Click on save, and that's it for setting up our preferences. Now we need to go over to our time slider out range and type in 33. We're going to make this cycle 33 frames long. Okay, it's about a second and a half. Okay, and that's how long it's going to take them to actually cycle. Let's explore how to use this character before we start posing and animating him. I'm going to just shut off my poly count here. It's a pretty simple rig. I'm going to first start by grabbing this outside ring, and in this channel box to the right, you can see the effects happening. Straight up and down is translate. I can rotate in X, Z, or Y direction, so that's going to be really helpful for posing the hip position for our character. We also have these little foot controllers. Okay, and when you first start using these, you might think, hey, I'm just going to grab them and I'm going to animate the rotation. But that's not actually what we're going to be doing here. We might raise it a little bit later on, but we're mostly going to control it through this roll effector. When you left click on the word roll, middle click and drag, you actually have the ability to roll off your front toe. Okay, and I also have this toe bend effector. Grab the toe bend effector and middle click, and you can actually bend the toe. And don't forget, you can actually use these two together. So you can roll up and then bend the toe separately. And these ones are the up vectors. They control the direction of the knee. This main null here, if you grab it and pull it, this is the actual positioning of the character. And this top null here is the squash and stretch. We're not going to use those two until later, along with this effector here. Okay, these are just the squash and stretch effectors. You can control the position of where it squashes and stretches. Pretty useful, but again, we're not going to use that until the end of our cycle. I'm going to shut off my view cube. And now it's a good idea to get a good feel of how long this frame rate's going to be. It's going to be 33 frames. That means our middle point is going to be at frame 17. Okay, so that's going to be our middle pose. We're going to be going through the contact position, the recoil, the pass by, and the high point, and those are all located at different points in the timeline. The contact position at 1 and 33, as well as 17. So I just left clicked and dragged around my character, go to frame 1, press S to set a keyframe. I'm going to go to the end frame now, press S again. The reason I do that is so I set a keyframe on all of my controllers on this character at both 1 and 33. I'm just going to go Window, Animation Editors, Graph Editor. And I'm going to pull over my graph editor here. And we're going to be using this a lot, actually. We're going to be using the curve editor. So first thing I'm going to do is go to Curves, Pre-Infinity Cycle, Curves, Post-Infinity Cycle, and down to View, Infinity. This allows us to see our curves as if they were going on forever. So it's really good for viewing if you're doing a walk cycle, or any cycle for that matter. I'm going to close that. At the top right, you see the channel box. You can turn it on and off by simply clicking that button, just in case you get lost and are wondering where that thing at the side is. Okay, so I'm just going to bring up a diagram here to explain some of the main positions for this character's walk cycle. Over at the top we have the poses, we have the contact, recoil, passing, and high point. Also located near the top is the path of action. Notice that the contact is kind of the mid-range, the recoil is the lowest point, and that's because your knee is bending and you have like a little bit of spring action. You have the pass by, also called the stork pose at times, and then we have the high point, which is the highest point in your walk cycle. Also below that, we have each of the keyframes that we're going to be placing these at. If you look a little lower, we also have the front hip position, where it would be in a standing pose and where it would be near the recoil and passing position. Notice that the hips are tilted. So this is a standard 33 frame walk cycle, and we're going to be doing it at 24 frames a second. Okay, so before we get started, I actually want to set this to automatic keyframing. Okay, and now just to explain this rig, we're just going to start positioning this character. So I'm grabbing the hip effector, bringing it down a little, grabbing his left foot, and I'm just bringing it forward until it kind of has a little bit of bend in it. So I'll take it right to the extreme, and now I'm going to grab my roll and start rolling it back by middle clicking and dragging. When I roll it back, I can now drag it a little bit further, and I just want it to the point where there's a little bit of bend in the knee. Okay, so I'll take it right to the end and then bring it back. Okay, same with the other foot. I'm just going to grab it, I'm going to bring it backwards, click on roll, and this time instead of rolling the toe back, I'm going to roll the heel forward. Okay, now I'm going to drag it back until it snaps, and then just a little bit forward from there. Okay, also with the hips, I'm going to position this, so I'm going to start rotating in Y, and notice that I'm rotating the hips toward my front foot. Okay, so it's going clockwise in this example. So whatever foot I'm directing, my hip is going toward. And then I'm just going to repose this and pose the right foot back. Okay, that's not bad. Now we're going to actually rotate. We're going to eventually rotate this side to side, but we're not going to worry about that part yet. We're not going to get too confusing. So we're just going to rotate it in the Y direction and a little bit forward. Okay. When you start getting into full body walk cycles, this may be rotated a little bit more forward. You also have the option to rotate it backwards if you're going more for a strut. But that's pretty good. I'm just trying to maintain the center here, maintain this character's balance for his first position, the contact pose. Now the contact pose, most animators actually start from there. It's just a really good, really common approach to starting a walk cycle. That it gives you the basic positioning, the basic all-around balance of the character, and that's why it's probably the best pose to start from. So I'm just reposing this foot. I'm trying to get a really nice pose to start from. So I'm going to go back to its full extent and then just move a little bit forward. Okay, now I'm going to, with auto key on, notice how when I scrub the timeline, it sort of changes. If I middle click frame 33 and set a keyframe, then at first, if I don't middle click, I'm still going to have that drag in between. If I middle click on frame 33, then set a keyframe, now when I drag, there's not going to be any interpolation between the two. Okay, so middle clicking copies that file and flattens those tangents out. If you just left click and set a keyframe, then there's going to be an issue. Okay, so often I will select the whole character, middle click at the end, and then set a keyframe. Okay, so I'm just going to go to the center of this walk cycle, frame number 17, and we'll start swapping out these values. Okay, so I'm going to grab the right foot, go to translate Z, and we're going to copy that and the roll over to the left foot. Okay, so I'm going to grab this foot, make sure I'm on frame 17, go up to translate Z, Control C to copy this number. Now I'm going to grab the opposite foot and paste it in. When I'm done, I hit enter. That pops the other foot back. Okay, so that's the same positioning. Now I'm going to grab the right foot again, go to the roll this time, and I'm going to copy this value. So I'm going to hit Control C, grab the other foot, go to the roll value, and Control V, and hit enter. Okay, so that pops the roll into the same. Okay, now I'm going to grab the hips, and it's the same thing, only instead of copy and pasting, all we have to do is take out the negative sign, and he'll rotate in the opposite direction. Okay, so because they're rotationary, all we have to do is change the reciprocal. Now this is where it gets a little trickier. Go to frame 1, and I'm actually going to add a little bit of toe bend right here. Now we can do this at the start, or we can do it right now. I just think that adds a little bit more to the pose. So I'm going to copy that toe value, and I'm going to paste it onto the other foot. Okay, so at frame 17, I'm going to first put that toe value to 0. So that means we have a toe up at frame 1. Okay, and then at frame 17, we have the toe down. So I'm going to go to frame 17 and paste that value of the left foot onto the right foot. I'm going to go back to frame 1, copy the roll this time, go to frame 17, grab the other foot, and paste the roll in. Okay, now I'm going to go back to frame 1 again, grab the toe bend value, copy it, and I'm going to go back to frame 17 and paste it onto the other foot. Okay, now I'm going to go back to frame 1 and make sure that my toe bend is at 0, and it is. Okay, so now when we press play, we should get something that looks like this. One thing with the toe, right now, I'm going to hit Control C, and I'm going to middle click on the end, and then I'm going to enter that in. I'm just going to hit enter, or I'm going to paste it. Now hit enter. Okay, because we didn't have that toe bend that we put on the initial frame, the first frame. We didn't have that on frame 33, so I just copied and pasted from frame 1 to frame 33. Okay, so everything seems to be right, except for, yeah. So that's not bad. We have our first our contact pose, and we also have a little bit of switching between, so we have a rough cycle of that. Okay, so let's just shut off curves and take a look at what's happening. Okay, so everything's kind of slowing out, then getting faster, and then slowing in. which is not exactly what we want. Ideally, when our right foot hits the ground, we want it to maintain a constant speed. Whereas when it lifts, we want it to lift slow, get faster and faster, and then end slow. Okay? So what we need to do actually here is go into the animation editor, graph editor, and go to translate Z. Okay? Now I'm just going to bring this, I'm going to kind of resize this so we can see both. Looking at the right foot, I'm just going to bring this down a little bit more. Okay? Now notice that, look at the curve. When I go past frame 17 and I'm looking at my little guy, it's kind of going slow, then faster and faster, then slowing out. But if we want the right foot to be on the ground here, we want this linear. Okay? So what we're going to do is left click and drag around the top frame, and then left click and drag, go to keys, break tangents, so we can move one side. Now left click and drag around the Bezier, the right one, and switch that to linear. Okay, that way we get a nice straight line. And then for this one, at frame 33, we're just going to make that linear. Okay, so this means that our character, when it hits frame 17, it's going to be going at a constant speed, which is what would actually happen if we were on that foot. Okay, with the left one, it's on the ground from frames 1 to 17, so we're going to do the same thing. Go into your graph editor, switch to translate Z. Now from frames 1 to 17, we want that to be linear. So I'm going to grab the middle one and go up to keys, break tangents, grab the left Bezier, and switch that to linear. Okay, and now I'm going to grab the left Bezier, switch that to linear, and now we have a constant speed. Okay, which is ideal because you don't really change your speed if you're on the ground. Like the ground's not moving. We're not sliding on ice, so we want to go at a constant rate, whatever foot is on the ground. Okay, so I'm going to grab all these. And the next pose we're going to look at is actually the recoil pose. Okay, so I'm going to go to frame, this is going to be on frame 5 and frame 21. Okay. So I'm going to start off by just scrubbing the timeline and seeing exactly where I want these. I'm going to go to frame 5, grab the left foot, and I'm going to zero out the roll and zero out the toe bend. Because by the time it gets on the ground here, we're not going to want our toe to be in the air. Okay, we want it to plant down quick. Okay, and for the right foot, we're going to actually roll this one up because it's going to go into the passing soon. So we're going to grab the roll, left click on it, and middle click and drag until we get a good position. Okay, so that's not bad. I might actually bring that up a little bit more, but decrease the toe bend because the toe is not going to bend as much when it's in the air. Okay, it might even be zeroed out. That's up to that's really your choice if you want to zero that out or not. Okay, so on frame 5, we're going to have that roll up. As for the hips, we're going to actually drag these down a bit because the recoil is the lowest position. And the reason it's the lowest position is because your knee actually bends the most, and it's going to be what's pushing you back up. Okay, standard anticipation rule through animation. Okay, so I'm just dragging the hip down a little bit. Okay. Now what we can do here is on frame 5, we're on the hip still. Middle click on frame 21. Middle click on frame 21, and that'll keep your spot. Now you can set a key here and translate Y. Okay, so that just means that the hips that I translated down on frame 5 is now translated down on frame 21 as well. So I just copied that value, basically. Okay, so that's not bad. It's a good start. We'll do the same thing on frame 21. Okay, so the first thing I just looking at all my key poses here. I do a lot of scrubbing when I'm animating. And, I'm going to go to frame 21. And just like in the left one, we're actually going to zero out the roll in the toe bend of the right foot this time. Because again, we want this to be planted flat on the ground by the time it gets to frame 21. Okay, so I'm just going to go to roll, toe effector first, type that to 0. Okay, see on how that looks. Okay, good. Go back to frame 21, and I'm going to zero out the roll. Now I'm going to go, I'm going to copy the values from the left foot, or from the right foot, where the roll is. It's at 7.638. And so I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go frame 21 and paste it onto the other foot. Okay, that way we have the same roll we had on the right foot. Now I'm going to copy the toe bend on frame 5 on the right foot and paste it on frame 21 on the left foot. So toe bend, paste, hit enter. Okay, so we should have those values copied and pasted onto the other side now. Okay, that's good. That's what we want. So I'm just going to scroll through and see how it's looking. Not bad, but we had a little error with our hips here. It's not copying over properly, so I'm just gonna view that. So this should be the reciprocal. Okay, so we should take that negative value out. That way it's facing the other direction. For some reason it didn't copy over last time we did it. Okay, so now, yeah, it's turning properly. Hit play and see how that looks. Okay, so not bad, but we have a little bit of bit of an error on the toe here. On frame 1, it's set pretty high on the left foot. On frame 5, it's flat. Actually, so let's drag this down to frame 3. And this way, we're actually stepping down a little earlier. Okay, so instead of 1 to 5, it's now 1 to 3. Same thing with 17 to 21. That's taken a little bit too long. Okay, so there's a little bit of too much of a hover. So I'm going to hold shift. I'm going to grab my foot, hold shift, and click on frame 21. And I'm going to drag that back 2 frames. That way I step down faster. Okay, we don't have as much hover there. That's a little bit, I think that's a lot better actually. Okay. Okay, now with the hips, we're at negative. I'm just going to bring that down a little bit. Middle click on 21 and hit S to set a keyframe. I think that's a little better. Actually, that might be a little too far up, so I'm going to go back to 5 and pull it up a bit. Middle click on 21, hit a keyframe. Okay, so this next part, we're going to add the high point and the passing positions. I'm going to start with the high point. It's located on frames 13 and 29. And I'm also going to kind of do the pass by at the same time. The reason I do the high point is it gives me a good spot to work off of. If I know where the highest point is, then I can kind of figure out where the pass by is. Okay, so I'm going to switch to my graph editor on the left side. If you don't see that, you can right click on any of those and go to perspective graph. And now I'm just going to kind of position my camera where I can see it a little better and go to frame 13, and this is where the high point is going to be. So I'm going to grab the hips and I'm just going to start raising it. Okay, and I'm just going to keep raising it until he gets a lot taller. Okay, until his knees basically buckle, and then I can bend them again. Okay, to help with this, if I click on Translate Y and hit F to frame, I can see where those curves are. I'm going to grab this left foot, and I'm going to go to his roll and zero it out. Okay. And now I'm going to actually roll this up a little bit, just so I get a better idea of where that high point would be. Because there is actually going to be a little bit of roll there. The passing position, that's where we actually zero it out. I'm just going to see where this is. Okay, so I'm going to click on roll, middle click, and just bend that slightly. Yeah, not too much. And then I'm going to readjust this just to get a good idea where everything could be. So that's not bad. So let's go to the passing position down to frame 9 and actually zero that roll out, because our heel is going to be flat against the ground on our passing position for the left foot anyway. Okay, not bad. Let's just see how it looks. Okay. Okay, so on frame 29, we're going to do the same thing to the other side. So I'm going to grab the hips here, go to Translate Y, hit F to frame, and I'm actually going to copy this value over. That's where it was on frame 13. Okay, so I'm going to grab it, I'm going to copy it from here. You can also copy it from the Translate channel box. So I'm going to go to 29, click on the Add key, middle click at frame 29, switch back, then I'm going to actually grab it and paste that value that I copied directly in this channel box here. Okay, the problem is that the tangents are sloped, so all we have to do is go to flatten tangents. And that's just another way of adding it. Okay, you can do it all through the channel box. So I'm going to go grab my pre and post infinity cycle and go to view infinity. That way I can see this whole thing, or what it would look like as a cycle. Okay, so grabbing the left foot, I'm going to zero out the roll. Or actually, sorry, I'm going to copy that. Then I'm going to go to frame. Then I'm going to go to frame 29 and paste it into the other foot. Okay, so that's the other high point. So they're exactly the same now. Okay. Now I'm also going to go to the roll 0 at frame 25. That's the right foot's passing position. Okay, so it's zeroed out there. Okay, I'm just hitting play, and that looks good. So I'm just gonna scroll my slider bar here, and it's going up and down a little bit too quickly. So I think what we should do here is on our passing positions, we should actually have a little bit more of a hold. Okay, so I'm going to grab my hips, go into the perspective graph, into the Translate Y. On frame 9, I'm going to set a keyframe by dragging the hips up. Okay, so we should get a it's a little too high. We want it to be lower than the high point. Okay, but if it's closer to the high point, that means there's going to be a little bit of a hold there. Okay, so now we can left click on this, left click and drag on the Bezier, and hold shift to drag up. Now I'm going to do it again. I'm going to copy this value. Now I'm going to go to frame the other passing position, frame 25, insert a key by middle clicking, going back and pasting this value in. Okay, so notice it's a little bit sloped. We're going to have to grab that Bezier and hold shift or press W, hold shift, and drag down. Okay, remember pressing W activates our move within here. So if you're having trouble moving things, just press W once. Okay, so that's a lot better. Okay, so we're not bobbing up and down as much. It's a little bit cleaner and there's more of a moving hold there. So I'm going to hit play. Yeah, that's much better. Okay, so let's turn off curves and take a look. Not bad. All right. Still a little bit of a glitch in there we'll have to clean up in a second. Turn my curves back on. Okay, so let's go back in our graph editor here. And if I click on the translate Y, notice at the ends, the frame 1 and frame 33, they have a little bit of a hitch in there. And usually you don't want that, especially when it comes to your loop cycles. There's going to be like a little bit of a glitch. So what we need to do is kind of make these a little bit smoother, make it a level transition. So I'm going to grab one, hold shift, grab the other, and flatten. Okay, now I'm going to hold shift, left click and drag around the one Bezier and the other, press W, hold shift, and middle click and drag down. Okay, so we should get a nice smooth action there. Okay, so there's a nice slope there. And if we scroll the timeline, we should see there's not as much as a hitch there as there was before. Okay, so just a little tip that it's really good, especially like when it comes to the end of your cycles, to have that there. It really smooths out everything. Otherwise, you'd have like a kind of a pop. Yeah, so that's a lot better. I like to zoom in and out just to see how it looks far away. That's not bad. So I scroll a lot, but I like to make sure everything's fine. My leg's a little straight there. I might end up bringing those down or fixing my legs. Okay. So let's just turn off the curves and take a look at what we have. Okay, it's coming along. The thing we need to work on now is the actual left and right sway of the hips, the translation in X. Because when you're actually taking these steps, your hips kind of sway from side to side. Okay. And then we're going to do the same thing with the feet. So I'm going to turn my curves back on and grab the hips and decide where we want these keyframes to be. So I'm just going to scroll along and look at about where the foot starts to raise. I would say the passing position would probably be the best to start changing the hip position. Okay, so we're going to go to the passing position. That's frame 9. And we're going to start to translate onto the foot that these hips are leaning on. Okay, so we're going to move it to the right. We're on the left foot, so we're moving to the character's left. Okay, and we're just going to get a good balance here. Not too far over, it'll look off balance. We want it to just look balanced, basically. That's a little too far. I'm going to move it back a bit. Probably about there is good. Okay, and we're going to copy that onto the other passing position. Now you can go up here and copy it from this value and paste it into onto frame 25. Okay, and hit enter. And remember, we're going to put the negative sign in. That way it's the reciprocal. It's going to go the opposite direction. Okay, so he's going back and forth, and that's good. There's a bit of a problem with the curve, so I'm going to go translate X, and I'm going to smooth them out. So again, hold shift. Okay, grab the start and end as I'm holding shift. Flatten them first. Now I'm going to grab the right Bezier's, press W, middle click, and drag. Okay, you can hold shift, middle click, and drag if the middle click and drag doesn't work. Okay, so now it's a lot smoother. We're not going to get like the hitch at the end there when the hips are changing directions. Turn off the curves and press play. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so we're now regaining our balance. Okay, so let's work on the feet now. So I'm going to grab his right foot and decide where I want the foot to start to come out. Because the foot actually changes positioning as well. So it goes from side back to where it was before. So I guess on frame 10 probably looks like the best. So I'm gonna push it over to his right or left. Maybe about there. Not too far. It's all about the subtleties, right? Okay, so that's pretty good. And then by the time he gets back to frame 17, we'll set a keyframe there, and that's where he's going to end. So we'll bring it back in a bit. Okay, so it goes out and back in. Okay, we're going to clean this up in the curve editor. Not everything's centered. The main one here is that on frame 10, he's going out, and then he's going back where he was before. So we can manually copy frames 1 and 17 and have them the same that way. Or we can just do it in the graph editor. Okay, so we're going to translate X. Okay, see how frame 17, that looks like where it should be. Okay, as far as the translation, it should be going out by frame 10. So that means I'm going to copy this value at 17 and paste it onto 1 and 33. So copy the value on 17. Now left click and drag and paste that value in, and it should go up. Okay, so now the foot's at the same position except for when it crosses at frame 10. And that's pretty good. Now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so let's do that to the other foot here. All right, so I'm going to grab the right foot, look at translate X, and we're at 0.0287. So we're going to go translate X in the other foot, and the equivalent to 10 here would be 26. Okay, because we don't really count 17. It's kind of the midpoint. And try with the reciprocal. Okay, that's actually, yeah, it should be positive there. Okay. So at frame 10 here, we're at negative 0.0908. All right, so let's grab that value. Go to the other foot, translate X, and we'll look back here. We'll paste that value in actually. Okay, that's what we should see instead. Okay, and make that positive actually. Yeah, it's kind of too far in. So, normally it'd be negative, the opposite, but in this example, yeah, it's positive. And I can only tell that because I'm looking at the top here, and I can tell what it should and shouldn't be. A value of 0.09 is almost 0.1, so you can actually see this. Okay, so that's where we are. Now we need to find where it levels out. Okay, so where that left foot would start and end. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the other foot, translate X, and I'm going to copy this value, 0.0287. Copy it. And I'm going to paste that on frame 17. Okay, I'm going to go up here and paste it in here this time. And I'm going to add it as a reciprocal. Okay, and now the other two should also be the same as this one. Okay, so grab it. Actually, copy it. Grab the other ones and just simply paste it in there. Hit enter, and then it should level out. Now you can manually hit those keyframes in there. I prefer working with a curve editor, and I suggest you do that too. Then you get more used to it. Okay, so let's just hit play and see how that looks. Good. Okay, so they're stepping even, then they your foot kind of goes out to the left and right, and then back to where it was before. So first, let's go into the roll, and on the right foot, and at about frame 29, let's just delete this key. We don't really need that. We're going to try to make it kind of slope more. So I'm going to go key, break tangents, and I'm going to change the Bezier here so it comes in more steep. And I'm going to basically I'm going to experiment a little bit here and try to get a better roll. Okay, so I'm grabbing the Bezier on frame 1. Break tangents, and I'm gonna bring this one up. I basically want it to come in as he lifts his foot in the roll and then suddenly change direction. I don't want it to have this nice arc. I want to sort of change a little bit more. So I'm just going to experiment with a few things here, and feel free to do that yourself. So let's see here. So I'm going to grab the top roll section so he doesn't raise his foot so much. And let's see. Let's just drag along. Yeah, see, it's a little bit steep, and he kind of goes a little bit slow. So I'm going to grab the first and last key, and I'm going to bring it down a bit. Break tangents. And let's grab those Beziers and make them a little bit more steep, and then drag the Beziers down a bit. So again, I just like to see what works best. I'm gonna break the tangents on this and drag down the left side. So there's going to be a sudden change in direction. Okay. So I'm just gonna change the slope a bit. And I'll drag this down, but I'm going to have to change the Bezier of the other key on frame 25. Change the Bezier, make it slope up a bit. And I'm going to change the other Bezier so they slope in. Just by left clicking, dragging, and middle clicking. And then I'm just going to find a good balance so that that foot looks a lot better. So it changes direction and doesn't roll up so much. Okay, that's better, I think. So I like to be picky. I like to play with the curves, and I like to see what works best. Eventually you'll get to the point where this is it's fairly fun to see what different results you get. Okay, so that's not bad. Sudden change in direction. The leg is a little bit straight there. Okay, so we're gonna have to fix that in a minute. I'm gonna go to the left foot here and figure this one out first. Okay, so at frame 17, we have the midpoint. I'm just gonna go to the right one, and I'm gonna see where that is in comparison. Okay, so frame 1 is to the left of that keyframe on frame 5. And Frame 21 is the high point here, so frame 17 would be the same as 1 on the right foot. So frame 17 on the left foot is the same on 1 on the right foot. So that means we can get rid of frame 13, the key here on 13, because that's the same as the key we had on the other foot that we got rid of. Okay, in comparison. Basically, you could just add 17 to the other foot, and it's pretty much the equivalent because we have even spacing. So I'm breaking tangents, and I'm going to change the direction in this. So I'm going to break tangents, and I'm going to drag this down so I have a sudden change in direction. And again, it's not essential you do this. I just like to get good. I just like to tweak my animations until I'm really, until I'm happy with it, until they look good. Okay, and you can't really achieve that any other way than playing with these F curves, because they really do. Changing your F curves really changes your animation. So I'm just tweaking right now. And again, I like to be picky. You guys don't have to spend as much time on it. Okay, so his leg is straight at frame 1, and it's also straight at 33 and 17 on the other foot. Okay, so we're going to have to fix that. Let's grab the hip and actually bring this down. So I'm going to go translate Y. And, okay, so let's see what happens when we drag the endpoints. That sort of works. When we drag the left ones, or the top ones down, not so much. Okay, so we're gonna grab these middle ranges here at 1, 17, and 33, and we're gonna drag these down, holding Shift, middle click, and drag down. That way they look a little bit more like the top position, and they prevent that knee from locking as much. Okay. So I'm going to flatten those, and I'm going to flatten the ones I just brought down. There we go. So I'm going to left click, and I'm going to break, or actually no, I'm not going to break tangents yet. I'm going to grab these, and then I'm going to grab each of the right beziers by holding Shift. And I'm going to drag down so we get a nice smooth around like that. And we'll look at the leg. Still a bit straight. That's fine. Let's grab the high points and the passing, and we'll drag these down as well. Oh, Control Z, grab them all, hold Shift, drag these down so the whole body is actually coming down. Okay, so it's a little bit straight still. It's better, but let's just go to frame 33 and drag these down. I think that's pretty good, actually. Okay, so now what we need to do, I'm just going to look at this and explain. When you're walking forward, right now in this character, notice that even though he's going side to side with his steps now, they're still facing straight forward, okay? And nobody walks straight-footed like that. So what we need to do is add a tilt. We're going to rotate our foot. Okay, so I'm going to turn my curves on, and I'm going to grab the right foot first. And go over to the curve editor. And I'm going to do this in a way. You can just grab it here and rotate in Y. But I'm actually going to go to curve editor, and instead I'm going to grab my curve, both sides of my curve. I'm going to hold Shift, press W, hold Shift, and drag down. And this just, the further down you have your curve, the more it's rotating. Okay, because every one of those curves represent a transform. Okay, so if I pull this rotate Y down, it's actually angling my foot. Okay, so we're going to copy that onto the other side in a minute. First, let's talk a bit about what's going to happen here. Your foot actually, before it rotates out, it rotates in. So I'm just copying that value and grabbing the other foot, pasting it in, and taking the negative out, hitting enter. Okay, actually, so yeah, so that one's rotated out now too. So if I hit play, they're both angled outwards. Okay, I just thought that'd be easier than doing one at a time. So yeah, I just copied the value from the right and pasted it onto the left in the rotate Y. Okay, so it's actually facing out now. I'm just looking at the distances. I'm going to rotate at frame 8 in the Z direction, okay? So frame 8, I'm going to rotate my foot in, and then shortly after I'm going to rotate my foot out, okay? Because when you take a step, your foot rotates inwards, and then it rotates outwards before you plan it. So by frame 8, it's rotating in. A couple frames after, I'm going to rotate it the opposite way. Okay, so it's going to go out negative 13-ish. Maybe a little too much. Maybe negative 5. Yeah, so we get rotate in Z, then we rotate out. Okay, and that's actually how it goes. There's a little bit of a anticipation with your footsteps. If you really study life, you'll see that. Okay, so let's... Okay, and by the time it plants back down, it's going to be centered back out to where it was originally before you took the step. Okay, so by 21 or 19, I'm going to push 0, so it's back and zeroed out. Okay, so that way it starts flat, goes in, then out, and then steps flat at 19. Right there. Okay. Okay, not liking that angle as much. Something to tweak. So I'm going to go in my graph editor and take a look at this. Go to translate X, or sorry, that's not the one. Let's go into our roll. So it's rolling out, and then there's a bit of a, yeah, kind of delays. Okay. So I'm going to attempt to fix this. Let's see here. I'm going to go rotate Z. And actually I'm gonna copy this value, and I'm just gonna go on for now and paste it onto the other side. Okay, so 8 on the right side would be 26, 25 on the other side. Okay, so in rotate Z, on frame 24, I'm going to paste that value in. I'm going to add a keyframe first, but I'm pressing W. And if that doesn't work, you can manually find it. Try again. Nope. Sometimes they're picky. Okay. So I'm going to go back to rotate Z, copy it from frame 8 on the right foot, and paste it in frame 24 on the left foot. So we'll try this again. I'm just going to type it in here. Okay, so that's what we should see. And that's good. So that means it's facing inwards as it raises up. And then copy the other value that's on 13. So 24 plus 5 is 29. So it's going to be in the opposite direction on 29. So it's going to be facing outwards. Okay, and this one's going to be negative. So we'll switch that up. Oh, wrong one. Go back to 24 and make sure this one's actually negative, so it's the reciprocal. So we want it to basically face inwards and then go outwards as it's stepping out down. And we're going to zero it out at frame 3. And that's pretty good. Take a step, steps down and zeroes out. Okay. Let's just change the Beziers on this so it's a little bit steeper. Oops, sorry. Break the tangents first. So I'm going to grab the first and last keys, break tangents. Then I'm going to grab the left one. And the reason I'm doing these is so that so it's a heavier drop. So if the curves are steeper, if they start slow and end fast, and they hit kind of really steep, that means it's going to change direction suddenly. Okay, so right here we want it to hit the ground suddenly. Okay, we don't want it to kind of slide. Okay, so that's not bad. Maybe move these up a bit, flatten them, and then grab it, and then angle it. I'm actually going to unify my tangents so they move at the same time and push it up. Okay, so that's not bad. I tweak quite a bit, but that's okay. Okay, so my tangents are a little better now. Yeah. So steps, and there's no change in direction as he's stepping. Okay, so that's good. Scroll through. All right, so it basically goes in and steps out. So your foot kind of rotates in, anticipates, and then rotates out, steps on the ground, and then zeroes out. Okay, so that's exactly what we want. That's good. Sorry if it gets a little complicated, but really it's just, I'm just looking at what's happening in my top perspective view here, and I'm kind of fixing it through my curves. I just find it's a really good workflow. You get really good control over your curves, and when you guys get used to it, you're golden. Because it really does. It has a lot of power. There's a lot of control. I'm gonna zero out my rotate Z at frame 5. Okay, so that way he doesn't change direction until frame 5. Okay, that's a little bit better. Like I said, like there's a lot of there's a lot of control you get over these curves, and they're industry standard. Like if you're in the industry and animating, I'm gonna zero this one out too. There's a really good chance that you're gonna be animating with curves. Okay, so at 17 and 21, I just zeroed out on the left foot. Yeah, that's much better. That way it doesn't change direction and it stays stationary until it lifts its foot. Okay, so that's all I basically did. It's zeroed out until he's about to lift, then it changes direction, and then 5 frames after it changes the direction the other way, and then when he lands, it zeroes back out. That's basically all I did there. So it's not bad. It's looking good. Let's just check this out from another angle. Okay, not bad. A few things I'd like to change. The toe flips, I'd like to have a little delayed. Let's see here. Let's go to toe bend, and that controls your toe bend. So when I middle click and drag, my toe bends. So at frame 3, just sort of looking to see where I would add the toe flip. Okay, so it's just overlapping action. I'm going to go to frame 5 and zero that toe out. Okay. And again, this is a lot of experimenting, but basically what I want is for the toe to go backwards at about frame 8. Sounds good. Okay, so I'm just going to drag a bit. Let's maybe make it about 5. So from 5 to 8, I'm going to have this toe go back. Okay, so it's going to be overlap and follow through of the toe. When he lifts at 8, so it's zeroed out at 5, he lifts at 8, so the toe bends back. So just slightly. I just don't want it to go through the ground too much, because that could pose an issue later. So that's why I'm being tedious here and experimenting. Okay, so from 5 to 8. Yeah. It looks a bit more straight. Yeah, so 5 I bent back. I'm gonna, and then 8 I really went far back. Okay, because I want it to, as I step, my toe to go backwards. But when he steps down, I want it to go forward. Okay, so there's a bit of overlap with the toe. It's a bit of struggle right now, just trying to make it so it doesn't go in the ground. Okay. All right. So I just changed the roll to 5.638 on the left, and then I copied it onto the right. Yeah, so changing that roll, he doesn't go through the ground as much. And now at frame 5, I set a key on the toe, and at frame 8, I can make that toe go backwards. Okay, yeah, that's much better. I just had too much roll there, so I copied it onto the other side. Okay, yeah, that's much better. So by the time we get to frame 17, our toe, or frame 19, our toe should still have some overlap. And then by the time we get to, so I'm just dragging, have some delayed action and overlap. By the time he gets to 21, I think he should be, the toe should be flat on the ground again. Yeah, so 2 frames after 19. Yeah, right about there. I'm going to zero that toe back out. Okay. Sorry this is confusing, but it's just experimenting, basically. It's best you guys don't copy my my example anyway, because then it wouldn't be yours. I'm just trying to get the best result. Okay, so on the right foot, I'm going to go to the toe bend, and I'm going to start fixing my curves up because they're a little kind of sudden here. So I'm going to break my tangents, and I'm going to make a sudden change in direction. So when it comes down, it lands flat. Okay, so I don't want it to slow in, because your toe doesn't slowly hit the ground. Your foot hits the ground, then your toe hits the ground, and that's what we're going for here. Okay, yeah, that's better. Okay, so that's not bad. Let's do the same to the other side. Okay, we're just going to, the toe's going through the ground right now. We're going to fix that later on. We're going to actually be raising the foot. So I'm going to go to the left foot, go to toe bend, and where he's hitting the ground, where his toe is hitting the ground, we're going to do that too. So I'm going to go to toe bend. At frame 8, I'm going to copy this value, and that is the equivalent to frame 8 plus 16, 24. And then we're going to paste that toe bend in there. So I'm going to copy that value again. I didn't quite get it last time. On toe bend, go to 24, and over here on the right, I'm just going to paste it in here. Okay, so that's what we should see. Okay, so the toe goes down and then overlaps and follows through. Okay, so we got the follow through, also called the drag right now, but we need the overlap. So I'm going to zero this out first. And go to the other foot. Check out toe bend. Okay, on 5 it was 21. Okay, so let's go to the other foot. And at about 21, we're going to paste that in there because it wasn't zeroed out after all. Hit that. Okay, that looks about right. Okay, not bad. I'm going to go to the other foot and the toe bend, and I'm going to copy this value on 19. That's when he's completely back on the ground. So 19 plus 17, I think it'd be about frame 3. About frame 3. Put that value in there. Okay, that looks good. And then 2 frames after, we zero that out. So go to toe bend, zero it out, so it's flat on the ground. Okay, so we're gonna want to change this slope as well. So we're gonna grab this one and break the tangents, and then make it steeper. Okay, so break tangents, and then middle click and drag, so his toe comes down harder. Not that much, more like that. Okay, so suddenly his toe comes down. It's not like a slow action. It's like his toe hits the ground hard. Okay, and that's what we want. So we got some good overlap. Let's just fix this tangent as well where we're here. Okay, make it a little more smooth. Okay, so his toe kind of palms out. His heel hits and then his toe hits hard. Perfect. Good. We'll fix this Bezier too. We didn't fix it on the right side, so I'm just doing that now. Alrighty. Good. Looks good. Save that. Okay, so let's just take a look at this. I'm going to show or turn the curves off, press play. All right, so it looks good. Our feet are going through the ground there. We're going to have to raise our feet because that's one of the issues. Okay, so I'm just going to grab the right foot here and look at where it's going through the ground. Okay, it's going through the ground in quite a few frames here. So I'm first going to go keyframe 5, bring up my channel box, and translate it up just so it's above the ground. Okay, key 5. That's pretty good. Okay. Okay, that was a little too much, so I'm just bringing it down a little bit. We can actually also do this in the side view. You probably get a better result. I can't really see it, so I'm going to go to 4 view, and I'm going to go to the side here, and I'm just going to maximize this so I can see when it's going through the ground and when it's not. Okay, that's what I wanted. So it's right on the borderline. Okay, so now I'm gonna scroll ahead a bit and see where it stops going through the ground, and it's still pretty thorough at going through the ground at frame 10. Okay, so at frame 10, I'm just gonna frame 9 maybe, decrease my roll, and translate it up. Okay, just so it's above the through point. And I'm going to paste my translation that I copied from an earlier frame. So 0.33. And now I'm going to lower that back down on frame 13. Okay, so just above the line there. And I'm going to take a look at this. Okay, so we might have to go on our curves. Not really getting the result we want. But it's closer, so let's just go back into the perspective graph and take a look at our curves. So translate Y, this is what we got. Okay, there's our reason. Okay, I'm going to switch this to the side so we can actually view the side as we are working with this. Okay, so frame 13, it just needs to break tangents. I'm gonna make this come down harder. Break tangents. Okay, so it comes down a little more linear, I guess. Just trying to find a good angle where it's not going through the ground. Okay. Right. Grab this one, pull it up a bit, so we get a nice slow at the beginning, and then it sits down really hard. Okay, it's still a little bit through the ground, but if you're looking at the other foot, it's actually not through the ground at all. So we can actually drag both these up first. Okay. And then it lands. So I'm going to grab this value, copy it, and paste. Frames 33 and 1 should be the same. So actually copy. I'm going to make this 0 actually. So I'm going to type 0 in here. So this one's flat. Okay. And I'm going to fix the toe bend here. Now I'm going to 0 that out. So it's completely flat by 13. And again, I'm just experimenting again, trying to get the best result possible. Okay, so it's still going through the ground, but now it's sitting flat on the ground when it lands. So that's good. Takes a bit of practice to get this right. And even when you get it right, like I just like to be sure that it looks good. So that's not bad. It kind of drops down a little quick though, so right about 13, we'll probably raise that just so it's more round, I guess. And then at 17, or 19, we'll lower that again. Okay, so it's probably good. Make sure it's linear. I'm just going to change the position where that was. Okay, so it's a little bit more to the right. Just one frame. That's pretty good. Okay, that's better. Just play, steps out, flips down. Perfect. Alright, let's do the same to the other side. Translate Y, and we're going to copy values from the Y on the one side to the other side. So in frames 33 and 1, that value is 0. And on frame 13, it's 0.143. Okay, so 13 on the right side would be 17 plus 13 on the other side, which would be 29. So I'm going to go to 29 and paste that value into the Y here. Okay, so our foot raises a little bit. Go back to the Y position of the other foot and to where the high point was on frame 9 and 8. They're both 0.367. Okay, so 9 plus 17, or 9 plus 16 rather, because 16 is a half, would be 24. So I'm going to paste that in there. And then one frame before it's exactly the same. Okay. So if we're looking at frame 8 here, it should have the same value. Let's also go back to frame 5. Okay, and paste those values in the other side. So 17 plus 4. So 23, first of all. One frame before is 0. That's good. And now let's go to frame 18 and paste that one in. Okay, and we should have a better slope, something more linear. Okay, so I'm just going to look at the slope here. Okay, so on frame 5, got a bit of a slope, and frame 1, it's zeroed out. So that would mean on frame 17, it's zeroed. Frame 1 and 33 are zeroed. So yeah, 17 and frame Y would be zeroed out. So that means 33 would actually be that value. So we're going to zero out 1 and 33. Fix the slope. Okay, so that's not bad. I'm mostly going by the visual up top and what looks good. So I'm going to delete that keyframe. And I'm going to actually make them, I'm going to break the tangents here and break them on top as well. Oh, break tangents. And I'm going to make this a little bit steeper. More linear, I guess. So he steps down a little bit harder. Okay. Okay, so he steps and still going through the ground a bit. But yeah, all in all, actually, yeah, that's not bad. He's sliding a bit too far up. So we'll have to fix that. Let's just look at it again. I'm going to make it bigger so we can get a good look at this. Again, a lot of this stuff's repetitive. Yeah, that's not bad. I'm just perfectionist, and that's what you got to do, right? Okay, so now I'm going to fix the up vectors. I'm going to start with the left one here. And we're going to make it, because his knees are kind of going, they're kind of staying in the same spot, so they're kind of looking like they go inward. But really, we want those up vectors to go out with his knee. Because if they do that, then it'll look like his knees are going out when he takes a step. And that's how it is in real life. If you start studying life, you're going to see that. So I'm going to go to frame 17 and zero that out so it's straight again. Just keep this one simple. So frame 1 is straight, frame 8 goes out. Okay, and I'm just copying the values onto the other side. So I'm going to copy 13, paste it directly on the other side. So 8 plus 17, it's 24, sorry, because there's a one frame delay. So on frame 12, for here it would be 29. So I'm just offsetting these now. Oh, in the reciprocal. Okay, good. Good. And the last one here was at 17. So that means on the other side it would be 1 and 33. So at 33, we would zero that out on the left side. So let's just go to 33, zero it out, and at 1 it's zeroed. Okay, looks good. So let's just tweak this a little bit more. The hips are they look a bit offset, and a bit slow, a bit too slow of an action. Okay, so this is how it is to be an animator. You really gotta just go in and pay attention to this standing. Okay, so right now we tilted it in the Y direction, but now we're gonna tilt it in the Z direction, the side to side directions. Okay, so your hips actually tilt toward the one direction. So I'm gonna turn curves back on and see where we need to tilt our body. Okay, a lot of this is actually just really studying motion, and I'm gonna slide that back there. Studying motion, how people walk, and how animations, how it looks real to you. So I'm gonna grab this right here. I'm gonna go to frame 5, and I'm gonna tilt this towards the raised foot. Okay. Just subtle though. I'm not gonna be too. I'm not gonna turn it too much because then it'll look not realistic and it'll look, well, fake. So I'm just gonna tilt it about there, and that looks pretty good. Just getting a good pose here. And again, this is at my recoil position. This is when it turns the most. Okay, so at frame 1 it's zeroed. At frame 5 it is rotated just a little bit. Okay, so that's pretty good. Maybe a little bit more. I'm going to middle click on 21 and set a keyframe. Okay, or adding the negative in. Okay, so it's actually going in the opposite direction. And that's pretty good. Not bad. I'm going to hit play. Okay, it's a little too much. It looks a little fake. He looks like he's kind of slipping and sliding around. So I'm going to go back there, and I'm just going to lower this amount. Okay, and I'm going to do it in here. I'm going to go to Rotate Z in the curve editor and fix my curves a bit. Okay, so at frame 17, we really press W, and I'm going to raise that a bit so it's a little more centered. Okay, because we want our character to keep balance. So I'm just going to raise that at 17. So that's not bad. change the Bezier so it's a little more rounded off, and copy this value. So that means on 33 and 1, we're going to paste that value in, but put the negative in. Okay, so it's the exact opposite. Okay, and again, I'm going to make this a little bit more curved by pressing W, holding Shift, and middle clicking and dragging up. We can curve out that bottom. Okay. Oh. I'm going to break my tangents here so we can curve that out. Have a bit of a hold there. So I'm going to press play. Yeah, so we got some nice sudden changes in direction, and it's a little too sudden though. Okay, so we'll go back in there and smooth these out, flatten them. Okay, so that's a little better. It's still a little bit too much, so I'm gonna break them again and pull these up. I'm gonna unify them actually, and I'm gonna pull them up so it rounds out a little bit better. Yeah, like that. Let's check that out. Okay. Yeah, that's a lot better. Okay, we'll round it out more just to see. Okay. Not bad. That fixes it a bit. Let's just see what this does. Okay, so we can suddenly change direction and then go at a constant speed and then slow back out. Okay, so a lot of this is just, again, experimenting. I've been doing this for a while, but I still take the time to see what looks the best, because all animations are different, really. You don't have a set of rules or a set of numbers that you can really plug into one animation. And if you did, that would just be a preset. That wouldn't even be animation, really. So I'm just dragging these points up and down, trying to see what works with this character. Really, you don't have to spend so much time on it, but I just like to get the best result I can. So let's just, I broke the tangents. I'm going to curve it down and curve it up. No, I'm going to curve back down. That looks pretty good. Oop. Yeah, so we got a nice sudden change in direction when the hip goes. I like it. I like that. I'm gonna probably look at it a little more thoroughly here. Flatten this tangent and go to break tangents. And I'm gonna see how that looks. Okay, it's a lot more sudden than the others, but it's pretty good. So let's see what happens when we slow out and then suddenly, yeah, really big hit. Okay, so just experimenting with these can give you some cool results. So let's hit it hard in the other direction as well. So I'm gonna grab that Bezier. Okay, I'm just gonna undo that. Let's take a closer look. Okay, it's a little heavy on the left side. But yeah, that's the whole point, right? To see what does what. Not just to get like a really good animation, but to see how you get that, to see what works per character. The best thing to do really in any situation is to become the character and just experiment over and over again until you get what feels right. Okay, and eventually you get to the point where you get really good at this, and you don't have to experiment quite as much. But I prefer, like, even though I've been doing it a while, to still go through and see what works best with this character. Okay, so I'm gonna go back in here again, and this time I'm just gonna see. Okay, so I'm gonna raise all of these so So it's not as, so he doesn't quite move as much. Okay, so it's smaller now, smaller increments. It's not bad. Okay. So that's not bad. Let's just save our project, and I'm going to turn on my view cube, click to the front. I'm going to turn off my curves and turn off my channel box. I'm going to zoom in and just find a good angle. We're going to do a quick play blast. Okay, so make sure it's on 32 frames so we get a proper loop. Get a good position, right click, go to play blast options. Okay, we're going to keep this as an IFF file. Okay, so reset settings. We're going to switch from an AVI to an IFF file. We're going to turn on save to file, or turn it off, sorry. Keep that the same. We're going to turn our scale up. So IFF file, turn show ornaments off, turn on the scale to 1. Okay, and then the rest should be pretty good as far as a play blast is concerned. I like using IFFs because then you get this little play blast thing. Okay, so that's what you get. That was a final. Okay, so he's hitting a little hard on the both sides, but all in all, it's not a bad walk cycle. Okay, so we got toe flip in then out. We got overlap and follow through with the toes. We got proper hip movements. Okay, doesn't look too bad. Just the side-to-side motion is a little bit rocky. Here's it from the side view. I really like the overlap and follow through of the toes. So there's a drag, then it flips. So drag, flip, and yeah, it looks good. It's going a little bit down too. So there's another thing we have to fix. All in all, though, it's turning out pretty good. Here's it from the top position. Really can't see much from here, but normally you do a play blast of that as well. Okay, so that's pretty good. A few things I want to fix here is the hip. The side to side is a little bit too strong. See, there's a sudden change in direction on 21. So I'm just going to isolate that. And see how there's a nice curve here? I'm going to actually add a curve in the opposite direction by grabbing it and flattening the tangents. Okay, so now it shouldn't bump so much. Yeah, so that's much better. Turn off show curves rather. Press play, see how it looks. Okay, so I think it looks a lot better. Yeah. Now I'm going to right click and go play blast and see how that looks. Okay, and there we go. Yep, that looks a lot better, I think. Yep, so it's turning out pretty good now. Okay, so I'm going to close this. And turn my curves back on. And we'll actually grab this center null here, the one that controls everything. I'm going to actually keyframe this, okay? So I'm going to go to keyframe 1, and I'm going to go to translate Z on that, because we're going to be moving this in the Z direction. And now I'm going to actually make this cycle with an offset. Okay, so instead of a loop, it's going to cycle in a straight line based off the last keyframe. Okay, so I'm going to grab both tangents. And first thing, I'm going to raise it just a bit. And sort of decide from there. Okay, so I'm going to cycle with offset. I'm going to grab both these, make sure they're linear. and then go to View, Infinity, Curves, Pre-Infinity, Cycle with Offset, and Curves, Post-Infinity, Cycle with Offset. So wherever that last key is, it's going to keep going in that direction. And it's really good as long as it's linear. Okay, so I'm going to start bringing this up and see how the curves actually continue to follow the same direction. I'm going to zoom out and bring it up more. Okay, so this is actually going to make this thing travel in the Z direction. Okay, and we're going to find a good, see right now there's a lot of slipping and sliding, so we're going to raise that up a lot more. Okay, so I'm going to just raise this up, and he's starting to go forward. He's still slipping quite a bit, so I'm going to frame it, and I'm going to actually move it up even more. Basically what we're trying to find is a good spot for his feet to plant on. And because when the foot plants, it's linear. Remember how we did that near the beginning? We flattened, or we made those tangents linear. That means it'll sink up to the ground as long as we find the proper curve. Okay, so that's a little too much. I'm going to bring that back down. And pretty good. Getting closer anyway. I'm going to bring it up, or sorry, down a bit. And I'm going to get it so it's flat. Okay, so a little bit more down. Okay. Not bad. Still a little bit more. Okay, I'm just tweaking it. As soon as I find that right point, he's gonna walk around that ground, walk along the ground rather. Pretty good. Okay, so there's still sliding there, so we know it's not exact yet. Okay, so I'm gonna step back for a second and look at this and see which direction it should go. So he's sliding a little bit too forward. Okay, so I'm going to move it down a bit. And a little better. Now he's sliding side to side. Okay, so right now I'm just, I'm going to Control Z that. It's too far back. Okay, so the problem isn't forward and back. It's actually, he's going side to side here. Okay, see how he's sliding there? He's actually sliding to the side. So that's a different problem altogether. So we'll try fixing it again through the Rotate Z, or sorry, Translate Z. We could probably get a little bit closer. But all in all, I think the problem is actually within the feet itself. Okay, so that's closer. Just barely bring it up a bit. Okay, so a little bit more. Okay, so we're getting really close there. That's not bad. Minimal sliding is what we want. We don't want it to be, old Nintendo quality, or Nintendo 64 when they first had 3D in that program, or that system. You know how the sliding was? We don't want that. We want it to be really good. Okay, so that's a lot closer. Bring it up a little bit more. So I'm just tweaking the values until he's not sliding at all. See how he's like going side to side? That's not if we didn't have that grid here, then this would be really hard. Okay, so holding shift and just middle clicking and dragging up a little more. Okay, so we're getting really close now, just a tiny bit more. And again, this takes a little bit of patience, but all in all, not getting a bad result. Okay, so let's just increase the values here. Something like 100. Just drag that over and press play and see how that looks. Okay, so yeah. So we're still seeing the sliding to the side, but as far as the forward motion is concerned, it's looking pretty good. So if we watch this out from the side view, it's going pretty good. Okay, so there's a bit of sliding still, and again, that's tweaking. I'm gonna actually turn my curves on, and I'm gonna look at the feet itself. So I'm gonna go in here, translate Z. Okay, so that looks good. Our linear is not off there. It's actually, it looks to me like it's in the X direction, or possibly a rotational issue, because that looks pretty good. So we'll try tweaking this a bit more until it syncs. It takes a bit of finessing to get this right, but you get a little more control than doing a straight ahead action right away. Because you can actually control not just the direction he's traveling in, but I can animate this along a curve. I can stick this guy to a curve and he'll animate directly on that. Okay, so I'm going to look at the side view here. And this might help us get the exact. Okay, so see, yeah, there's the problem. It's actually traveling up and back a bit. So I'm going to try a little bit harder here. Okay, a little bit back. Okay, so that's good. But see how the Y direction, he's kind of floating there? He's kind of floating up in the air. We got to fix that. So I'm going to go translate Y, and I'm going to fix the flying in the air issue. So I'm going to grab this key here, 18, I believe. Yep, and let's zero that out. That's where the issue is. Okay, good. And now that means we have to flatten these tangents. Okay, because they were kind of offset, or kind of going through the ground. Much better. Okay, good. Now we got to do that on the other side as well. Okay, so I'm going to bring these up a bit so he's not going through the ground. Good. Okay. Let's do it to the other side. Translate Y. I'm going to go to frame 1. And now frame 18. I think that's the one that's causing the flying issue in this one. So type 0 there. I think that was caused by when I was trying to get a nice arc. I was compensating by raising the foot. You shouldn't really do that. You should play with the arcs, okay, or the roll in this case. So I'm gonna translate that up a bit so he's not going through the ground as much. Okay, a little bit more. And not bad. Okay, so again, you can come back, tweak this as much as you can. You know, you want to get it basically perfect. So I'm going to go to the toe bend and actually kind of fix this. He's kind of going through the ground right here. I'm gonna compensate by going the other direction. Okay, so there we go. So he's not going through the ground, doing that as much anymore. Not bad. Okay. Let's go to translate Z. Make sure everything's good. Translate Y. Everything's good. All right. Right on. Now he's just got the backward slidey thing. But yeah, so we can actually switch back to our perspective. Grab that null again. Or sorry, we'll just shut this off and we'll play this and see how that looks. Yeah, so that fixed it a lot. Still a tiny bit of sliding, but not that bad. Not even that noticeable. So if you go in and tweak this for a little bit longer, you'll get a perfect walk. He's got the nice side-to-side motion. He's got his overlap and follow through of his feet. His knees, his feet are kicking in then out. And not bad. Now the only thing left, I think, to do is to add some squash and stretch, because this guy has squash and stretch effectors. And I think that'll pretty much wrap it up. So let's do that. I'm gonna stop this and turn on my curves. Zoom in a bit and grab this top effector here. Okay, remember how this one controls the squash and stretch based on translation. So we're gonna just manually straight ahead keyframe this. So I set a keyframe at 1. Go to frame. Let's see, where would he start? I would say set a key at frame 13, and then let's go back, set one at 5. Yeah, so just past the contact position, let's squash him down. Or sorry, yeah, the recoil position rather. Yeah, the recoil is going to be the lowest point in the animation, so we obviously want that to squash the most, but we're going to offset it by a single frame. Because you're not going to squash at the same time your foot goes down, you're going to actually be offset by about a frame. Okay, so I'm gonna go to frame 10 now, and I'm gonna drag this up. Let's just think about this. Okay, maybe at 14, I'm gonna have him stretch out because that's his high point. That's his highest point, so he's gonna stretch there, offset by a frame. Okay, so that's not bad. Okay, maybe at 15. Drag that 13 down to 11. Let's see how that looks. Okay. Yeah, not bad. Great. Okay, so I'm just offsetting that on frame 29 to 30. Let's hit play. Okay, so not bad. Just make sure wherever he steps down, it's offset by a frame, and wherever he stands up, it's offset by a frame, at least. Maybe 1 or 2 frames, depending what you're going for. But I'm going to squash him less. Okay, so on frame 6, he's squashed. Also on frame 22, so middle clicking and hitting a keyframe there. In a stretch, I'm not going to stretch him as much. So at 14, I'm going to middle click on 30 and set a key. That should be good. Yeah, that's much better. Cool. Yeah, I like that more because I don't know, if he's going to squash more, he should definitely rise and fall a bit more in his walk cycle, I personally think. All right, so there's him from the side angle. You know, I might even angle him a little bit further back. He kind of looks like he's on a mission right now. But that's fine. I'm gonna go with that for now. The cool thing is, once you have this stuff done, it's really easy to tweak and change the overall emotion of your character. So on frame 14, I'm just gonna stretch that out again and see what that looks like. Middle click on 30, set a keyframe. Cool. Good. I like that. So I'm gonna bring it back on 22 and on 6. I'm gonna shift and select it and just drag it back a frame. And see how that looks. Okay, so it's actually happening on the step down. It's kind of working in this character, but let's grab these frames and drag them back a bit, and grab these ones and drag them back. Okay, so I'm just experimenting where these keyframes could go by holding shift and dragging around them, and then just left click and dragging them down the timeline. Okay, so that looks pretty good. The 1 hour Bali walk cycle. All right, so let's I like to tweak a lot, so I'm just gonna go in here and I'm gonna flatten these, and now actually I'm gonna grab the front and end, hold shift and drag down, so we get a nice curve going on, and then we're gonna do it in the opposite direction as well. Okay, so this is the squash and stretch up and down. Okay, so that smoothed it out a lot. So now we don't have like sudden glitches in the up and down angles, and I'm just dragging that down so it's not as high either. It's a lot easier to control in the curve editor than it is actually to manually do it. So once you get used to that, your workflow is going to speed up significantly. All right, I think that's pretty good. So turn that a bit more, and I think we're pretty much done. Okay, turn off my curves and let's just take a look. Okay, there's our final. Pretty good. I don't think it turned out too bad. There's the side view, squash and stretch, and all the rules of animation basically applied to this walk cycle. Great. Thanks, guys.